Okay, so I just got through watching this documentary called The Lost Century by Dr. Stephen Greer. And this is probably going to be controversial and may bite me in the ass later, but I don't care. I feel like him and people like him are just a different kind of plant. Like, the type of plant you see in the world, in, politics, in celebrity, in any sort of high position that you could possibly think of. You can see those plants because they all speak the same language. They all kind of say the same thing and nothing ever changes. And I think it's kind of the same with him. And I feel like he tries to come off as this savior of the world. I think it appeals to his ego. And I really do think that at the core, he wants something better. But I think he is just as well paid as the opponents that he talks about, that he calls fascists and all of that. Um, and the documentary had great information. I'm not putting down the documentary. I actually donated to that documentary, to the making of that documentary a few years ago, and I finally got to see it. um, but I just feel like the whole alien thing, the whole, I feel like it's just a distraction. I feel like the most valuable information that he's given has been reconnecting with self and source. He's talked about that, but it's always in an effort to connect with aliens and not fully just with self. It's like connect with self so you connect with them, you know? And if aliens were the answer, then we would have been saved a long time ago. If, you know, all the shit that politicians talk about was the answer, then it would have been solved a long time ago. If 0 point energy was the answer, then it would all have been solved a long time ago. But I feel like the core of the problem is that the masses believe that we can't change anything collectively. And he offers the advice of let's come together and demand that they bring out these energies and they don't suppress it anymore. How many years? I'm just starting to really focus in on a lot of these organizations, whether it be aliens or conspiracies or government or even religious. Like, how many years have people been praying? How many years have people been calling for disclosure? Like real disclosure. How many years? How many years? And everything takes time for sure, but has any of it ever made anything better for anybody? I just feel like in the grand scope of things, it's a huge distraction. Of course, there's life out in the universe somewhere else. There's gotta be. There's life everywhere, in different forms that we don't know about. Who cares? Our lives are fucked up. I had a conversation with my mom. I was like, the answer is so fucking simple, but we just cannot believe that it's that simple. And she's like, well, what do we do? What do I do? I'm just one person. And I felt the same way. I'm like, the only thing we could do, and I'm going to offer something different. Instead of telling us to band together and demand that they give us what we deserve, like how many years? How many years for menial change? Even when it comes to just being black people demanding equality, how many years? I feel like we got the equality of the rest of the world, that we are all slaves to this thing that we've all collectively decided to agree to. And so I offer a different alternative on how we change the world. Instead of demanding that those who want to keep us where we are give us something, how about we choose not to continue to agree to the shit that we agree to on the inside? So for me, this looks like opening my eyes and realizing that a lot of the things that we do is just a huge distraction to keep us from that core self that is in control of everything. That for me looks like letting go of religion, because I recognize that it's also a huge distraction for me. Conforming to belief systems and rules that has never really helped anyone. If anything, it's allowed us to be okay with scraps. Be grateful for what you have, because you could have nothing. As if nothing was an option in a world or in a universe that is completely and totally infinite. On a planet that gives abundantly and continuously every day. As if nothing is an option in a world like that. And deciding not to agree to things like that. Don't get me wrong, I love a good conspiracy. I love a good story. But I recognize that it is a huge fucking distraction. Because while I'm looking at this documentary and being entertained, I am being fully distracted from myself, from my core light, and from the ultimate truth that I am an infinite being. And because we have been bred to believe that humans are weak and small and we have no power, we have to believe in something else in order to bolster ourselves into power. We have to have all the things and the money to become someone worthy of listening to. Because we believe that collectively, this is where we are. And as an individual, I'm choosing not to believe that anymore. Imagine if that happened within everyone. Even 20% of the population of the earth. Imagine if people started to say, you know what? They just really open their eyes wait a minute. All of this is a distraction. All of these things are only made to keep me from here, this inner self. And it seems so simple, because it is. It seems so simple that it makes you believe that it's not going to change anything. But really, the only thing keeping us in the system that we have is our mindsets, our belief systems that are built to perpetuate belittling ourselves. In religion, every single one of them perpetuates the fact that you are human and you are nothing. Aside from things like Buddhism and things like that. But even still, to have the Buddha to be the ultimate guide on how to be infinite. There's no guide to be infinite. That's just one way of doing it. Buddha was just a person, just like any other prophet, showing you the way to yourself. And there's not one way to be infinite. Yet, we follow these belief systems. The belief system that you have to live in poverty and struggle and pain just to be a person of dignity and someone to look up to, that you've lived on next to nothing and you've trained your body to hell laying on the ground or whatever. That's not admirable. I mean, it is if you can do it, I guess, but that doesn't make a person better than another one or more enlightened. Peace is a state of mind, but really it's just a remembrance of that you are everything at all times. So I offer, instead of just banding together and demanding things, how about you demand something of yourself? You demand that you refuse to believe that you are lesser because you're human. You demand that you remember, I won't say believe, that you remember that you're an amazing being, an infinite being, that you remember that you've never needed anything or any belief system to know that, and that these things that we try to acquire are just things. They're just things. And they're small on the scale of who you are. Think about all this. Kind of the reason why I was thinking about something. Kind of the reason why I don't really watch too many consumer like makeup videos. Sometimes I do, where they have all these products and all these things I bought from Amazon, all these things I bought from the internet or whatever. I don't want to see that shit no more. I don't want to buy all these fucking things from Amazon or Sephora or whatever, which I never do anyway. But it's like, I don't want to live my life worshiping those things. I don't want to live my life worshiping something outside of myself. I want to live a life of remembrance that I deserve better, that I don't deserve scraps, and I don't deserve to be treated like lesser because I'm human. Imagine if everyone remembered that, all the things that we wouldn't accept anymore, all the things that would change. I was thinking about that in context of some of the things that I wanted to do, some of the things I needed. Like I needed shoes recently. I bought tennis shoes. And I bought another pair that was just okay. I knew that they were probably going to go to shit soon. And I was like, well, I could keep these. I'm like, no more of that. No more of accepting shit and keeping shit just because it's simple or easy. No more of that. I deserve better. I can have better. I want better. And I got better. Now, was it exactly what I want? No. I'm working up to that, though. There's time for that. But it was the best that I felt like I could have at the time. And there's nothing to be ashamed of when it comes to that. I'm learning that there's nothing to be ashamed of where you are. You know, we've been taught to be ashamed of where we are if it doesn't look like a certain thing. And I'm not following that belief system anymore. I'm not following anything that takes me off of the distraction that I am, the everything that ever was and ever will be. And that can look like me being in this body, walking around the earth with the clothes on my back, and I'm still an infinite being. And being proud of that. This world will shame you into nothing if you allow it, because every single person around you feels like they're nothing. That's why we're here. We have been taught and bred to believe that we're nothing, and we believe it. We live like we're nothing. We think it's okay for everyone to suffer. That suffering somehow brings a level of triumph over adversity or something. I don't know. I don't get what the human obsession is with suffering. I never got that. Why would I take a suffering road when I can take an easy one? The universe and nature never takes the hard way. That's what's so funny to me. Nature always takes the easiest route. Always. Always. It never takes the hardest route. So why would you? Why would you put yourself into the hardest possible situation to build character? Or bring yourself more virtue for being, I don't know, diligent or whatever. That's a fucking lie. It's a lie. Universe doesn't even work like that. It moves in the easiest possible way that it can move, in the most efficient way. That's why it got so vast so quickly. And that's how I want to move. So instead of just screaming to the top of my lungs, "This isn't fair. You need to treat us better." I'm going to start by treating me better, deciding what I'm going to accept and deciding what my own values are. Because the things that I used to value when I was younger, even today I'm thinking about, I don't think that's the right way to go. Everything in this world is temporary. I own nothing in this world. The only thing I own is this body and my mind and my spirit. Everything else is just a temporary thing. And to attempt to own everything for the sake of owning or for the sake of needing to feel like somebody important to me is a flawed logic. Why try to have this one thing or that one thing when you could literally have the whole universe? And I'm not even totally sure what that means yet. But I feel like I'm onto something that I've been missing for a long time. I think humanity has been missing. And I'm not the only one. You're going to see more people talk about this, especially the younger generation. They're going to talk about this. But they're already talking about, I don't want to live to work. We weren't built for that. You know, I was also thinking about like when he's talking about the energy, how a lot of people won't want to get on board with it because they feel like they're going to lose, especially people who are like in the middle class, which is even more hilarious. You have the most to gain. They think like, oh, if, you know, they take away oil and gas, then, you know, we'll be out of jobs and we won't have to, you know, we won't have, or our stocks will go to nothing and we won't have any money. First of all, the idea and concept of money is so primitive. It's so unnecessary. The earth is more infinite enough for everybody to have what they need. And we have the technology and the ability to create a world where people can have what they need. Second of all, if you took away, if energy was free, that means your monthly expenses would be cut probably by 80% to zero in some cases. So that means your traditional way of getting electricity, like we pay for energy, what's the words? We pay for energy directly and indirectly in everything that we buy. So we have the like energy of the air conditioning running in my room, the lights in my room, the phone or whatever. That's a direct way of getting energy. The gas in the car, all of those things would go to zero. Think about how much money you spend on that every month. And then think about the amount that you spend on groceries. Most of that would be just traveling, just getting it from one place to another is probably half of the cost. And then the labor, because they don't pay people fairly anyway. So imagine your food bill going from, you know, say you spend, I don't know, $200 a week down to 70 or maybe even $50 a week for a family of 3. I don't know how much people spend. You know, I spend way less, but you get what I'm saying. If you're a single person, that expense going down to $5 a week. Can you imagine? So all the money that you think you need to make, and even when it comes to products that, you know, and a lot of things are ridiculously overpriced, overpriced for status and all. Imagine all of that going away. The biggest fear of people who want to keep things the same is realizing that they are like everyone else. Elitist people do not like the idea that they're like everyone else because they already feel like nothing. And to feel like nothing means that anyone who doesn't have what I have is less than me. Those people would have the hardest time, I know. But the rest of the population would be freed up And then the people who say, I won't have a job to do that anymore. Well, maybe you can do what you actually want to do, because most of the people who have those jobs don't want them anyway. Or maybe you can move into doing a job that can actually make you happy. It doesn't have to happen all at once, but when it does, can you imagine living a life where you do what the fuck you want? Oh my God, that's impossible. A life where you can do what you want, where money is not a thing, and that the trajectory of humankind is actually moving forward and not consuming to ignore the fact that you're totally and utterly miserable, and that you feel like nothing every day that you wake up. So you have to put on name brand clothes to feel like somebody. You have to drive a certain car to feel like somebody. You have to have a certain job or belief system to feel like you're somebody. Imagine not feeling like that anymore. There are a lot of people who will reject that because they just cannot fathom that they are everything already. And that's unfortunate. But I'm lucky that I'm not them, nor do I have to live like them or be like them, that I could choose to be something else. There's something wonderful that happens when you're freed up just a little bit more than you were yesterday, because the things that people would hold over your head, they don't even affect you like they used to anymore. They don't bother you as much. The things that you used to want, you're not tied to them like a slave or like a person trying to constantly chase them. When you realize that there's nothing to acquire, that you are it, that everything you have is it right now, and that you could have more. It doesn't matter whether you live to see this future or not. You're already it. You already have. And that I can choose to live this life the way I want to, however that may look. And that I have the power to orchestrate that right here. Anyway, I love entertainment. I love a good story. But there's a lot of things that I'm slowly just letting go of, releasing. Because I just don't want to be a pawn in the big distraction wheel anymore. Just a little bit less today. These people who claim to be champions for the common man, yet they live in really nice houses and drive nice cars and have all these properties and live on, beautiful acres in the Blue Ridge Mountains and luxurious compounds that they built for themselves that are fully off grid and all these things. You just begin to wonder, who's funding this person? How are they making this money to be able to have these things and to be able to preach about them? It kind of reminds me of church. You have a pastor, you have a church in the hood, and you have a black pastor rolling up to the church in a nice Mercedes Benz with a nice Versace suit and Versace glasses and shoes. And, his family lives in, a beautiful gated community. And his kids go to private school, and, he has all these different things and nice things and watches and jewelry, and yet the people that he's getting the fucking money from can't even afford groceries every week. Grandma is giving her last to pastor to make sure that he has, but her family doesn't. Does that make sense to you? Doesn't that sound like a conspiracy? Can't you tie that to a lot of things in this world? You could either choose to participate in them or not. Either way, you are free to choose. And that freedom is proof enough to let you know how important you are to the universe.